I just had a thought. I remembered, I think when it was like the first few months, you were showing your wrestling videos of you jumping off a roof or roofs. Is roofs a word?
Just one.
A roof, and Lawrence and you were fighting, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I remember that video, and I was like, holy crap, this guy's crazy. Because you were jumping off a roof.
Well, Rodney was a wrestling fanatic too. That's how we hit it off. But, but you weren't as into it as we were, right?
When Stone Cold and Undertaker were gonna fight at SummerSlam.
Yeah, 98.
That was a good year though. That was awesome.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so that was 98, and I remember. I mean, I watched wrestling when I was younger, like when I was in third,
like Hulk Hogan type days.
Yeah.
So you had the archetype fandom that we hear all the time. Like I watched when I was a kid with Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and all that other stuff.
Yep.
And then you dropped out of it and came back.
My grandfather actually would go to shows at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, really?
Back like in like what was it, the 80s? And was there anything in the 70s going on with wrestling?
Mike.
Probably, right? Yeah.
They've been running MSG since the 60s.
Yeah, so he would go to those shows. So my grandfather would watch it, so I kind of got into it from him a little bit, which is kind of interesting. A Polish immigrant loving wrestling, you know.
By the way, speaking of Polish, my mother's side was Polish.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know anybody else who had a Polish lineage growing up, per se. A lot of Jewish and Christian, Judeo-Christian in my area. But when I met you, it was really funny because you were the only other person I knew that knew the word dupa.
Yeah.
Everyone else who doesn't know dupa, by the way, you're sitting on it right now.
Yeah. No, but the whole Polish immigrant comment, going back, my grandfather was in a concentration camp during the World War II era. So he was like this tough guy, carpenter. Like he came over with like 3 kids. His wife had died in Poland. So like when I say like Polish immigrant liking wrestling, like it was just rare that this guy, having gone through some of the worst shit in life, is, you know, into a fun, wrestling. It was pretty cool to, so.
His favorite must have been Ivan Putski.
It could have been.
The Polish power!
It probably could have been. That's kind of, I think, the beginnings of when I started seeing wrestling.
I only remember you being into Rey Mysterio. He was your favorite.
He was cool, yeah. But I don't think he was in WWF or E.
Not then, no.
No. But I love that whole 98, I guess.
The Attitude Era.
Yeah, like D-Generation X, right?
The Rock.
And you had The Nation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of good stuff going on. And I guess you liked it, right? You were into that, or were you not into it? Because I know you have your ups and downs with wrestling.
Well,
you're kind of like,
okay,
this is good, this is bad. I'm tired of this.
Well, to be specific, the Attitude Era started off really good, really well, because they had been getting their ass kicked from WCW with Nitro and NWO.
True. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, right?
But then with all the ECW influence, you might remember that. Remember, people would say about ECW, that's stuff that's real, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember even like when I was in 3rd grade, in lunch, I'd ask the janitor, because he was at the wrestling, I'd be like, WCW is real, right? He'd be like, yeah, that's the real stuff, or whatever.
But ECW.
But I think it was also WCW at the time, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
But it's funny because what's more real about ECW when they're hitting each other with stop signs and vacuum cleaners, and that makes it more real.
Right.
But at any rate, it started off really good, and it was definitely needed at the time, and it appealed to people like us because we were just full of hormones and anti-establishment, rebel against everything, attitude. It was perfect. But then it got way too convoluted.
Right.
It got so over the top a year later, like in 99, that's when I really, I would complain every week. And what's funny is when we would do the roundtable, we did a whole show on the Attitude Era. And I said the same thing that I felt back then, which was that it was way too excessive. It was inappropriate, like Lagana, inappropriate. I just didn't think that's what wrestling should be.
Yeah.
And people would leave comments on YouTube like, you guys are just saying that now. Back then, you weren't thinking that. But I'm like, no, we were. I was the only, maybe we're in the minority, but we had a fully formed opinion on that at the time.
And actually, I wanted to ask you, do you think it was so good, though, in 98 because of the personalities, like the wrestlers, or was the writing that spot on, or was it like the perfect storm? Like you had great characters, you know what I mean? You had great writing.
When it comes to characters and charisma, that will trump all.
Yeah.
Because especially with there's so many people our age who cling on to that era and want to relive it.
Right.
And that's why like the network, WW Network now, that's us. Like that 1,000,000 point whatever subscriber base is all people like us who want to relive it. There's no kids who are into, I guess, John Cena or whomever's around now who go and watch like 1997 pay-per-views and stuff. They're into whatever it is now, and it's just people like us wanting to relive it. So when people talk about that, they say the storylines were so good. Well, a story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, correct?
Correct.
The best, let's say, storylines of that time, total misinterpretation. They're the best premises. In other words, Stone Cold Steve Austin is this anti-establishment, beer-drinking, non-corporate guy who's bucking the system against Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
That's a great plot, a great premise. As far as the story goes, the beginning was good. The middle was good, like he gets the title and he starts messing with McMahon and whatever, but there really wasn't much of an ending. And by the time we got to it, there were so many convoluted swerves and turns and I've won the company and then I've won it back and you're retired for life and come back a few weeks later. And there was a lot of good ideas, and it's kind of like movies. Maybe the writing per se might not be the best, but I mean, it is in that sense, all the elements need to match up: the music, the catchphrases, the writing, the booking, and the personalities. That's what I was getting at. Right. People always say the key to a good movie is casting. Well, at that point, that roster's insane. You had a lot of good, hungry, fresh faces. Yeah. That's what we were watching at the time. So let's go into the video class itself.
Sure.
So I meet you and Rodney. You two are fast friends. Yeah. And then I come into the fold, I guess. I hit it off. And
you made your way to the 3-man table. And then there is the 7-man table on the other side, the others.
Yes. Tell people about the triple threat